Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I have a long arm quilting video for you. Today I'm working on the chicken salad quilt and finishing up all the quilting on that, so I will show you from beginning to end what I did with the quilting on this, and I'll do some narration through it because there's the furnace or the air conditioner noise in the background. It's just been blistering hot here in the Midwest, so the air conditioner's running almost constantly, so it was hard to get any filming time when there wasn't a lot of background noise. So I'll do some narration for you on there, and at the end of the video I'll show you some close-ups of the quilting and the blocks so you can get a good idea of what this looks like. So I hope you'll stay with me. Here I am quilting the border of the quilt, and I already have the quilt stabilized, so that means I've stitched in the ditch around all of the blocks and between the blocks and the border. And now I'm just doing a crosshatch on the border. Now the border is made up of a lot of different pieces, and there are 4-inch squares and 4 by 8-inch rectangles that are sewn together to form 8-inch blocks, and then those are sewn together to make the border. And all of those fabrics are prints, and they're all busy, so I chose not to do dense quilting in this quilt, since this is just a whimsical quilt. It's not a formal quilt or a traditional quilt. It's whimsical. And I really didn't want to put the time into doing a lot of quilting. And besides, I've been having a lot of trouble with back pain lately, so I really needed to do something that was faster for this quilt. And you can see from here that I am quilting really slow, and that's what I do when I first get started on a quilt. It takes me a while to get comfortable enough to pick up the speed, so I just take my time and do the quilting at a slow speed to begin with. Now the ruler I use is just a straight edge ruler by Rob's Rulers, and it is 3-inch wide by 12 inches long. And I don't believe that company is in business anymore, but any straight edge ruler that you have will help you do crosshatch like this. And I'm just doing the single crosshatch, so it's kind of a loose quilting. It's not dense, but I think there's plenty of quilting in there to hold this quilt together really strongly and to make it useful for years to come. Of course, if I take it off the machine and decide it needs more quilting, I can always put it back on and do that, but I don't think that will happen. The thread I'm using is a white thread by Omni, which is made by Superior Threads. So any pale thread that matches the background works well. Now the background isn't a pure white, but it's not an obviously off-white fabric either. So you have a good choice of range of thread colors to use on the backgrounds of this quilt. And I use the same thread throughout. And I'll try and remember to put that in the description box below of the number of the thread color that I used. And it's a nice thread, and it's pretty economical, so you might want to give that one a try. Now for quilting around the applique, I used a couple of different tools. I used 2 different sizes of circle templates, and then I used a ruler by I have to think of the name. Anyway, that one I have in my hand now. That is by I can't think of the company at the moment. I will link that in the description box below so that you can look at that one. It has different cuts throughout the ruler with different straight edges and curves, and it's a nice tool for doing applique. You can turn it to all different angles and do your applique, and it has a couple notches in it for doing applique, you can fit those notches up against your hopping foot and just help guide your hopping foot, so you don't have to use the edges. I used that for the first couple of blocks, and then I kind of set it aside because I am really comfortable just using circle templates to quilt around applique, and using that tool and keep turning it to different edges. It just seemed to be taking too much time, so I wound up setting that aside and just using some circle templates. And then as I got more comfortable, I wasn't even using templates. I was just freehanding around the applique. Now on the chicken feet, I mentioned before, there's a lot of layers where all those pieces come together, and it's hard to quilt through those and to do the applique stitching on it. So I did not try to quilt through those. I just quilted around those, and I think everything looks fine. Those are small pieces. They really don't need to be quilted down, but if you want to try them, you certainly can. So the quilting on this really didn't take too long. As I said, I didn't do any dense quilting on this one. Now, I've only seen one other of these quilts that has been finished, and that quilter used a small pantograph on it, and it looks really nice, and it's a lot denser quilting than what I'm doing here, but it looks really nice, and so don't be afraid to quilt over your applique. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind though is you've got button embellishments on these quilts. They're used for the eyes of the chickens, and so if you're going to do an overall or all over quilting design pantograph, you would probably be better to wait and put those buttons on after you get the quilting done, because those buttons will get in the way, and if the needle of the machine hits those, it's going to break the needle, and it could throw your machine out of time, so you don't want to do that. Now, I did those beforehand because I knew I was going to do it a custom design, and I could watch for them as I'm quilting. But there's also a problem of those buttons being in the way of the ruler when I need it, and there were occasions when the ruler had to lay on top of those buttons in order to do the quilting, like right here, and sometimes that ruler slipped and slid underneath the hopping foot, and I clipped the hopping foot. Now those rulers are made for the long arm, so they're thick, but what happens is they kind of slide as the hopping foot is up at its highest peak. It'll slide underneath there, or just a corner of it will, and it'll clip it, and it'll take a chunk out of your ruler, and it can throw off the timing of your sewing hook. So you want to be careful of that. And if the needle hits it, it could break your needle. So you really have to be very careful with that. So I just thought it would be easier to put those buttons on beforehand, knowing I was going to just have to watch them as I was quilting. And I'm still glad I did it that way, but if you were sending your quilt out to a long arm quilter, you might want to leave them off and save your quilter a little grief. Okay, for this segment here, you can see where I am quilting around each of the applique pieces. And here on this tail feather, I am quilting within the applique. So I did the quilting a little bit different in each of the blocks, so none of them are exactly the same. They're all a little bit different, but after a while I did finally kind of settle on a technique to use, and then followed that pretty much throughout each of the quilt blocks. And I think it turned out really well. Now this technique of the applique has the stabilizer on it, so you've got an extra layer of material within the blocks, within the appliques, but it really did not cause any problems. Now in the past, if I've had fusible applique, the machine seems to drag over the applique, and I did not have that problem with the interfacing foundation on these applique pieces. So I was really happy with that. It's a technique that takes a little bit longer to make your appliques, but it doesn't give a stiff feeling to your quilt. So there is that advantage. So now here I'm using the same thread as that red or white thread on that red fabric, and you can see that thread isn't standing out. It's just kind of blending in. So I just use that same thread throughout the entire quilt. Now I'm going to speed this up here in just a little bit and let you watch the quilting. Now on the background, I did a crosshatch in the background, and it's a larger crosshatch. It's 1 inch wide, and you'll see where I start out with just doing 2 inch wide diagonal, and then I came in and did 1 inch in between and did kind of a serpentine line. So it's not really cross-hatched, it's just diagonal lines going through the background. So you will see that in just a little bit. Now on the applique on the body of the chicken, I just kind of echoed around it and just use the width of the hopping foot as my guide as to how far apart each one of those little lines were. And on the baby chicks, I outlined the wings and then did a little bit of quilting within the wing and didn't do anything else to the body of the chicken because the majority of that applique is the wing of the chick. And, it's a small area, so I didn't feel like it needed any more quilting than that. And when I was stitching around the appliques with the embroidered feet, I just stitched over those appliques, as well as when I was doing the background, I just stitched right over the embroidery, I mean. So I didn't worry about going around that when I was doing the embroidery. So here I am going around the applique and then doing a little echo quilting, or, just like an 1/8 inch around the outer edge of the wing applique there on the little chicks. So that is pretty much all the quilting on that applique, and now I'm going to do some marking for the background. And I have a ruler that has a 45-degree line on it, and I'm going to switch that around here in a minute and draw the lines. I'm going from corner to corner of the upper left to the lower right corner, and just using my lines on the ruler to do all the spacing. So once I've got the first line in, I know I've got it at the right angle, at a 45-degree angle, then I'll just use that to guide the ruler for the next line and then just keep going. And I'm using a water-soluble pen that's just a Mark Be Gone pen. And when I get done with all the quilting, then I've got a spray bottle of water and I just spray it, and then the marks go away. But you can use any kind of marking tool that you like. You can use a friction pen if you like, or an air-soluble pen, or chalk, whatever you want. But since this was a white background, I didn't want to use a blue chalk, because blue chalk is a little bit hard to get out of the quilt without washing the quilt, and I didn't want to have to wash the quilt afterwards. So I just used my Mark Be Gone pen. And now I'm quilting the background. So I'm just using the 3 by 12 inch ruler again and just quilting down to the applique. And here I cut the threads. I'm not sure why, because normally I will just quilt around the applique and go to the next line. But right there I quilted it. But I always do the first first block. I'm a little more conservative on how I'm doing the quilting. So, and here I'm cutting the thread again So I guess I was really not feeling very confident of my quilting design here. But anyway, it all turned out really well. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up the rest of the video, and I hope you enjoy. Well, that is it for the chicken salad quilt. I still need to do the binding, but that won't be a big deal, so I'll get to that when I've got time between projects. But this was a fun project. It was a long one, but it was a lot of fun, and I really like the quilt, and I think this one is going to be decorating my sofa in my living room, so it'll be getting some use there. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please click that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.